First question, I'm going to get straight into it, no messing around. Tell us about Harry and Meghan's relationship, because I've heard rumours and reports of them arguing lots, and also about Harry apparently staying in hotels.
Well, the nub of it is whether they're going to divorce or not, and I don't believe they are. And I think, there are tensions in relationships, but I think that in the end, he needs her, she needs him, and it's a relationship based on a good business understanding. And so I'm not of those who think that they're about to in any way break up. I think that on the whole, he needs her because he's a lonely, sad man, and she needs the label. And I don't think there's some unbelievably rich billionaire in California desperate to take on Meghan and all her baggage.
Yeah.
So I don't think her exit would be smooth.
Okay. Well, speaking of breakups, what's going on between them and Netflix? Is this a similar deal to Spotify, the disaster there, and them being grifters and too lazy to work with?
No, I think the Netflix deal was obviously lucrative, hugely lucrative, and it went wrong because they have nothing to offer. The problem with Meghan and Harry is that they're a one-horse race. I mean, they've got a great story about why they left the royal family. There are lots of lies about what happened in that relationship. But once that was told, they had nothing new. And Meghan is a woman of huge ambition and total ruthlessness on her terms. But she is a woman without much talent. She's not a great actress. She has no mystery. She tries to cultivate a persona or an image, and it doesn't particularly work for long. And they had a great shot at all sorts of things. The series on polo, her series on being a domestic goddess as ever. Also, she had another series about lifestyle. It didn't work because she really is pretty empty, other than that she has this amazing title and has always got the threat of destroying the British royal family, and that's what makes her so interesting to us.
Well, you say they've got a good business relationship. What are their finances saying? Because another rumour that flies around is that they're rapidly burning through their cash and they don't know how they're going to keep on funding this lavish lifestyle.
Well, I think that is absolutely true. I mean, I raised that more than 2 years ago, that once the Netflix deal expired, which I knew it would, that they really have a huge financial problem because their lifestyle costs them a minimum after tax of £3 million a year. And although they've got the money now, Meghan is a woman who's very, very conscious of money because of her childhood and everything, and therefore is terrified and needs to build the brand. And the Netflix deal fell apart because they had nothing new to offer, as ever was a failure. I think they put all the effort they could into making it successful. But in the end, Meghan had nothing to offer other than smiling with a lot of non-entities and offering recipes which were just ridiculous. And her ideas were ridiculous. And that's their problem. All they could do, as they showed in this Australian tour, is moan about the royal family, moan about their victimhood, somehow try to look glamorous and royal. But it's got to have to come to an end. I think that's what's so interesting. There's got to be an end.
Okay. Now, you say in your book as well that Kate, or Catherine as I'm supposed to call her now, Catherine saw Meghan as a threat.
Yes, I think that's right.
But why?
Well, because I think that Meghan has a lot of qualities which Catherine or Kate doesn't have. First of all, she's self-made. I think she's clearly well-educated. She's ambitious. She's worked hard. She's achieved on her own terms quite a bit, although not on global terms. And I think that she has a ruthlessness which threatened Catherine or Kate. I think that she wasn't going to put up with curtsying to the future queen. She wasn't going to fit in with their lifestyle. Kate could see quite immediately that Meghan was furious that they were living in a small house in Kensington Palace compared to the sumptuous 20 rooms occupied by the then Cambridges. And also, Meghan had great style. She had clothing style, she had appearance style, which Kate didn't have, or which she then quickly employed experts to change her appearance. And I think that was a threat. And I think the biggest threat of all was that Meghan thought that she should be the future queen. And that clearly was not going to happen. But that really meant a lot to Kate, that there was this rival across the corridor who wasn't going to be content with being lower in the pecking order.
And what does William think about Meghan?
I think he thinks she's dreadful. And she has behaved dreadfully. I think that he saw her as an ambitious opportunist, a woman of absolutely no substance other than being a hussy from Hollywood. And this was something he wasn't going to put up with. And he could see how she'd manipulated Harry, which of course she did brilliantly. He could see how she wasn't going to be loyal to the royal family. She had no intention whatsoever of opening hospitals in Stockport or standing on a cold day in Colchester. And he saw exactly what was going to happen. And of course it did. And William, to his credit, tried to warn William that it wasn't going to work.
Harry, yeah.
To warn Harry that it wasn't going to work. And Harry didn't take the advice because Harry was caught. He was determined to marry Meghan for his own reasons.
Do you think there's any part of this where actually Meghan isn't that bad? And it's like a narrative I see painted onto women all the time. You know, a mother has a son marries a girl, and suddenly it's the girl's fault for everything. Oh, well, Harry wasn't like this before, and this woman's connived and she's changed him. Maybe Meghan's just given Harry the confidence to be his own man now and do what he wants to do instead of having to toe the firm's line.
No, I think that's true. I think that she did exactly that. She gave Harry the confidence and the safety net to be his own man and not be part of the firm. But on the other hand, if you look at her treatment of her own father, of her first husband, of many of her friends, she is quite ruthless in dropping and dumping people and then very publicly castigating them without any truth at all. So I think you can say both things, that she has turned Harry against his family, there's no doubt about that, in a very vicious way, and predictable, because if you remember, Samantha Markle, her half-sister, predicted before the wedding that Meghan would break up the family, just as she'd broken up her own family. I mean, she is a breaker of relationships, because Meghan in the end is only interested in one person. And that certainly isn't the royal family.
Do you think it's fair when people call Meghan a narcissist? Is that
I think that's so true, and it's an understatement.
Understatement.
Well, I think that she's much more than that. I mean, she is. I mean, it's just as you said in Australia. I've been campaigning for women all my life. Now I'm campaigning for myself. I mean, it's all ridiculous. She never campaigned for women. She always campaigned for herself. But there's a selfishness there. Why she is so selfish when she is so blessed with such luxury and privileges now is bizarre. But in the end, it's because she's dissatisfied. You know, her father, who is a good man, and she's treated appallingly, told me of this instance when she was 5 years old, and you know he was a very successful lighting director in Hollywood, and he took her down the red carpet on some opening night, and she said, "Daddy, I want to do this. I want to be the star." And that was it. She wanted to be the star, and of course she failed. She failed on her own terms because the highest she got was Suits, which was a small program, nothing very important, but then became the star by getting married to Harry, a global star. And instead of being happy with that and taking the terms, she was determined everything had to be on her terms. And that was worse than narcissism. That was destructive. She's an agent of destruction, and that's what I don't forgive her for that, because what she did in the Oprah Winfrey interview, what she said against the royal family, what she said against Britain, everything was just so unfair and wrong. And it was really a dreadful thing what she did and continues to do.
Okay. Now, what about Harry and William? Are they truly brothers at war?
Sadly. I think that great relationship, support after Diana died, William helping Harry to try to come to terms not only with the death of Diana, but also post-traumatic syndrome after serving in Afghanistan, which affects many people when you see death and all the rest of it. I think William did his very, very best to help Harry. But Harry, you know, one thing to remember about Harry is this extraordinary story about when they're at Eton. And one boy says to Harry, you know, Harry, it's terrible. The exams have come out, the results have come out, and I'm bottom of the class. And Harry says, well, I'm bottom of the school. And you must never overestimate Harry's limited intellect. And instead of seeing William as an ally, he saw him as a rival. He was always jealous that William would be king one day and not himself. And he couldn't come to terms with that.
Okay. How do you feel about Harry and Meghan in response to your book, Betrayal? And it's a fantastic read, might I add. How do you feel about them accusing you of deranged conspiracy? That's the word thing they used.
They did a lot more. I mean, I think of course they said all that, the damnation before the book was even published, which is always very encouraging. Although I mean, Harry can't read a book, and never has, and I don't think Meghan reads many books either. But what I take from it is this: that the thing about Harry and Meghan is they think only their narrative, only their story should be accepted. They can't take it that somebody could criticize them, that someone can question them. And whenever she gives interviews, or he does, they always carefully choose the interviewer in the expectation that their version will be accepted uncritically. It goes wrong for her more recently than not. But they can't stand it that I am, in the end, the biographer, now 2 biographies. Betrayal is a #1 bestseller, sold all over the world, and tells a story they do not want told, which is the truth. And that's what they can't cope with. And the truth is that they really are a sad couple in many ways, desperate in many ways, eager somehow to try and find a way they can navigate over the next 50 years, and find it difficult to find a way over the next 5 years.
Wow. You also wrote in the book that Harry was shocked by Andrew's downfall and his loss of titles. Do you think Harry's worried that once William gets to be king, he's going to have his title stripped and his kids' titles too?
Absolutely. I think that was a great, great shock to Harry. I know it was a shock. Because if you remember, everyone said that Andrew could not be stripped of his titles without an act of parliament and all sorts of procedures across the whole Commonwealth. But in fact, they just fudged the Constitution and said, well, letters patent will do, which is ridiculous. But it did the trick.
Yeah.
And I think that William and even King Charles now, after watching the couple in Australia, will now be to seriously think, can we afford the risk to the monarchy by this couple selling the royal titles and using it for their commercial benefit? So I think Harry rightly is worried that once William becomes king, Charles won't do it, of course.
No.
But once William becomes king, he'll remove the problem completely by removing the Duke and Duchess of Sussex title and also Harry's Prince title and the children's titles.
Ooh, that'd be quite the blow for him. You described Harry's Invictus games as the Meghan games.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I was quite surprised. I mean, the idea and the execution of Invictus games is terrific. I mean, these are men and women who've sacrificed life and limb in many ways for their country. And they're being rewarded and being glorified, and rightly so, and being given an opportunity with their families at the Invictus Games of competing and being part of the Invictus family. Yeah. It's a great idea, and it's wonderful. But I went to Vancouver to watch the last games, and with believing it would be a wonderful experience, and I thought it was a rather unhappy experience because 2 things. There are no spectators. No one comes to watch them, except the opening day and the closing day, when they have a huge pop concert. And so they had Kate Perry there, and they had some other gig on the last day, and then the auditorium was packed. But more importantly, on the first days, it's Meghan. Everyone wants to see what Meghan will wear, what Meghan will say, what Meghan will how she'll behave, and of course the kiss which she gave Harry in the front of everyone in that stadium, was so contrived. I watched it and thought, there she is, the great actress, or the bad actress, whichever way you take it. And she loved the performance. And even he was surprised by it. And so the moment she then went back to Montecito in California, because she had some crisis with her TV series, all the coverage stopped. No one was interested in the games. No one was interested in Harry. The media disappeared. The coverage in a few newspapers disappeared because it's Meghan. And that, of course, is what it's all about. We'll get onto it perhaps, about the Invictus Games, the forthcoming ones in Birmingham.
Well, hang on. If it's all about Meghan, surely that's a good thing then, that she is making a show of herself and being performative, so people can... more attention can be put onto the games as a whole.
Well, they're not. That's the trouble. I mean, I went to various competitions, and one I highlighted in my book was the basketball team between America and Nigeria. Nigeria, as my book shows, are a very special part of this last Meghan's story, because they went there on this sort of pseudo-royal tour. And the Nigerian team was trounced 24-0. by a professionally trained American team.
Yeah.
But what was extraordinary was, first of all, that the venue, which had a capacity of around 2,500 people, there were around about 40, 50 spectators. Oh. And more importantly, after the match, when the American team wheeled themselves off into a closed area, they all got up and walked away. Not one of them had a physical injury. Now,
what?
I thought that was pretty amazing, because when you see the images and the propaganda, it's always limbless ex-soldiers competing, but not a bit of it. And I thought that was appalling. Now, the Nigerian team, I think one man had a prosthetic leg, but they were trounced because they just couldn't beat this American team, who were, as I say, professionally trained. And so the whole thing is uneven.
Right.
And I just felt not genuine. But then you looked at Meghan and Harry amongst the audience. They were seated in the middle of 100 people, specially invited, packed into a small area.
Yeah.
So the viewer had the thought it was very, very full,
of course,
and artificially fed in cheers and things. So I thought the whole thing was, it was inauthentic, to say the least.
And next year, Invictus Games will be in Birmingham.
Well, I mean, and that is fascinating, because in Vancouver, which is beginning of last year, Birmingham was already settled. He'd been offered Washington, but he chose Birmingham for one particular reason. It was to get reconciliation with the King. Okay. It was, the whole point of it was that he hoped King Charles and Camilla would turn up, and it meant the re-entry of Meghan and Harry into the royal family, revalidate them as royals, so they could continue their commercialization of their titles. And he's coming in July for a trial, the rehearsals.
Yeah.
And he'd hoped, of course, to be seeing King Charles at the same time. I think the Australian trip has now put a kibosh on that. But he's got another major problem, which he couldn't have anticipated, which is, as you remember, the whole Birmingham saga when Aston Villa were playing Maccabi Tel Aviv, and Israelis were not allowed to come, Jews were not allowed to come to Birmingham. Well, the IDF competes in the Invictus Games. Right. There'll be a team from Israel, but soldiers wounded in Gaza and Lebanon. So the idea that the local Muslim Islamic community will allow them to compete is going to cause Harry and the Invictus Games huge problems.
Yes.
And so he's walking into a controversy on two levels. A, the King, and secondly, the games themselves.
Gosh, so you think the local Muslim population are going to tell Harry, you're not having your games here anymore?
Well, they'll tell the police, just like they did with the football thing. It's not Muslims, it's Islamists. I mean, the extremists.
Okay, yeah.
And they're vicious, they're vicious. They're determined, they're very, very anti-Semitic, and they won't allow an IDF team to compete. And that is going to be a huge problem. And you can be absolutely sure the King will not want to be part of that sort of controversy.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So you don't think there's a chance that King Charles will just pop in for 5 minutes, say hello, smile for the cameras, shake his son's hand, and then jump back in the Rolls Royce?
I don't.
No?
I don't, not least because of what we've discussed, but also because I think William will forbid it. I think William's role in all this is pretty critical.
Okay.
I mean, he wants to have a smooth transition. He wants to change the monarchy, understandably. He wants to modernize it. He needs to appeal to young people and all the other things. He doesn't want to be involved in more controversy, especially to benefit Harry and Meghan.
Mm-hmm. Well, what is Harry's relationship like currently with King Charles?
I would think distant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that Charles, understandably, would like a better relationship with his son and his grandchildren. I think Charles does feel a guilt for how Harry was treated after the divorce and even after Diana's death, because he was very much an absent father. But on the other hand, Harry is now 40, he can get on with life. King Charles had his own problems, had his own responsibilities. Harry had a very privileged upbringing, much better than other children who lose their mothers. It's awful, but it's not unique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the king feels that Harry has behaved appallingly. He's been unbelievably disloyal. In part of my book, I tell the story of writing of Spare, his autobiography, filled with hatred and nasty stories about the king and William and Queen Camilla, and how that all evolved in the writing of the book, which is itself a fascinating story. And Harry had absolutely, not only did Harry author a lot of this stuff, this vicious poison, but he even read it for the audio version. So the idea that he hadn't read his own book is thrown out, which often happens for celebrities. But he actually endorsed it. And it was shocking. So I think that quite rightly, the king and William feel very betrayed, which is, of course, the title of the book, because they have been betrayed.
What if the biggest royal headlines right now aren't about new events, but about how old stories are being reinterpreted? When a show opens with explosive revelations, it's doing more than informing. It's shaping expectation. Once viewers are told they're about to hear secrets, everything that follows feels more significant. It's a subtle shift. The framing turns commentary into exposure, even before the evidence is fully explored. Conversations about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle often focus on compatibility, but what's more interesting is adaptation under pressure. Relationships in extreme public environments don't operate normally. Over time, couples either become more unified against outside forces or more dependent on maintaining a shared narrative. When finances come into focus, it signals a shift from personal story to long-term sustainability. For public figures, income isn't just money, it's leverage, independence, and influence. So discussions around finances often reflect deeper questions about control and direction. When narratives introduce conflict between individuals, they create a clear storyline: tension, sides, and stakes. But what drives engagement isn't the event itself, it's interpretation. Once something is labeled a threat, audiences begin filling in gaps, often extending the story beyond what's actually confirmed. When something is presented as the truth, it's worth asking, whose version? A biographer like Tom Bower doesn't just report events. He constructs a narrative using sources, timing, and emphasis. That doesn't make it false, but it does mean it's curated. Segment 6, 12 o'clock, pushback. When criticism is met with silence or response, both become part of the story. Silence can be interpreted as strategy, while response can be seen as defensiveness. Either way, the reaction often fuels the narrative more than the original claim. Moments like this highlight a contrast between controversy and contribution. Initiatives like the Invictus games show impact, but public attention doesn't always follow impact. It tends to follow tension, which can overshadow even meaningful achievements. When King Charles III enters the conversation, the focus shifts from individuals to institution. This is no longer just about relationships. It's about legacy, continuity, and how personal decisions affect a centuries-old system. Mentions of NDAs bring up an important theme: control over narrative. In high-profile environments, controlling information is just as important as creating it. NDAs aren't unusual, but they do shape what the public gets to see. Public image in Hollywood operates on momentum. Support can shift quickly, not always based on facts, but on perception. Once a narrative starts to turn, it tends to reinforce itself through industry signals and media coverage. Stories about institutional cover-ups resonate because they tap into a broader belief that powerful systems protect themselves. Whether proven or not, that idea alone can influence how audiences interpret every related claim. The idea of exile carries emotional weight. It suggests distance, consequence, and separation. But in modern contexts, it's often more symbolic than literal, representing a shift in status rather than physical isolation. When public figures step back, it creates mystery. And in the absence of information, speculation fills the gap. Silence doesn't end the story. It often amplifies it. Discussions about the future introduce long-term stakes. It's no longer about current controversy. It's about how today's narratives shape tomorrow's roles, expectations, and public perception. So here's the real question. Are we uncovering hidden truths, or just watching different versions of the same story compete for attention? Because in a world where narratives shape reality, what people believe can matter just as much as what actually happened. What do you think? Exposure or interpretation? Drop your thoughts below and follow for more breakdowns like this.